coming out of Joliet, there were a couple of big news stories, and the first of which was that Joel Rodriguez was sacked from the number 44 car. I was scheduled to drive in the Brands Hatch round in the number 49 car. I was scheduled to try to put that car into the field. Obviously, that didn't really work out because the 44 was left without a driver, and of course I stepped into the car and put it in the field, which I'm actually very pleased with. And I also put that car on the outside of the front row for the race. But in other news items, Joseph Howard was injured at Joliet, as well as Ian Cooper and James West. All three drivers sat out, but Cooper and West we believe will be back for round 5, and that'll be great to see. Howard we're not so sure about. Howard could be out for a little bit longer than that. Jeff Sesnick replaced Ian Cooper, Jason Bates in the 69 for James West, and Joseph Howard had Garth McAllister Jr. as his replacement driver. McAllister Jr. did not actually qualify for the race because he was punted off the track by Brian Sendak during the qualifying race. And the actual race itself, the big thing appeared to be getting heat into the tires, the big story, because, well, it was just hard to do for whatever reason. Low ambient temperatures probably contributed to that. And the longer you ran on old tires, the faster you seemed to go. And so the lap times in practice were all over the place. There were cars running 114s and some cars that hadn't even gotten past 115s because they simply weren't willing to risk a tire blowout. Dan, over to you. Thank you, Lance. The Clutch Pole Award went to the aforementioned Brian Sendak in car number 40, the Red Bull STS, the dark blue car. There he goes. This is actually his first start of the year. He's failed to qualify for the first 3 rounds. However, some people suggest he's been wrong there. There's an incident on the first lap since there were not going to be any full course yellows in the race. David Krikorian, who qualified pretty well, goes off the track coming out of Druids. Tom Delgado does likewise and actually gets into the side of DK in the 9. Krikorian continues on. There was a bigger incident, in fact multiple ones, on lap 2. This is what causes the second one. Scott Stoidler goes off into the tire walls, collects Tony Durbin, and Palmer Styles gets a piece, as well as Cyrus Laterza in that purple 74. However, this big stack-up only makes it worse. Dan Klesel gets into the back of points leader Dale Roswell. They go spearing off the track, collecting Zach Duff, Gary Edwards, Julian Asova. Duff takes a wild ride. Dan Klesel is in that number 25 car. This is his first start of the season. Here's from Duff, chasing Duff, and he gets clipped by the 25, and BAM! Into the wall, into the tires, and Duff goes out of the race very early on. Duff got out of the car okay, fortunately. Julian Asova was having some problems with the 1 car already, and she retired it after running into the 8 car. Apparently they've been having some kind of problems all weekend because very rare that Julian Asova would be this slow on a road course. Also, Ryan Araki in the 32 car was a casualty of this wreck. You see everyone going by. The number 32 team decided to end up retiring that car. Brian Sendak in the number 40 car was beginning to pull away a bit, stretch out his lead, but Alexis Rainsford was right on his heels. Leonid Roderick would be sitting in 3rd in that orange number 4 car. Roderick has not won on a road course since Decatur a couple of years ago. And then Lance Andrews would be in 4th, Damian Snyder in 5th. Speaking of Lance Andrews, there he is in the all-white unsponsored car. Joel Rodriguez apparently took his sponsors with him when he was booted off the team, and the crowd was rather pleased with Lance Andrews' performance. Also, Allie Riggs in the number 29 car, the Audience Sound Systems Lennard Q9, having a very good run. This is kind of a surprise since Allie Riggs' season in the Master Cup Series has been a complete disaster, to say the least. Right in front of her, Lewis Kingston and Carlos Donzello. Jeff Sesnick, the team boss for Jeff Sesnick Racing, took over the driving duties for the number 2 car. Jeff has not done particularly well in his previous Master Cup Series starts. However, this would be a slight exception to the rule. Jason Bates, an Arla driver, took over for James West in the J.D. McDermott number 69 car. Of course, they are affiliated with the Carl Racing team in Arla. Pete Maverick in the number 18 car tried to be the highest up of the Power Steering Incorporated cars. He is not qualified for any of the first 3 races either. His teammate Kurt Pliskin in the 16 has and has done very well. Not a whole lot was expected of Pete Maverick, but he was running in about midfield. Alexis Rainsford in the number 27 car, defending TM Master Cup Series Drivers Champion, was losing a little bit of ground to Brian Sendak and also losing a little bit of ground to Leonid Roderick in the 4. So Rainsford had to pick it up a little bit, and a lot was expected of Rainsford because Towards the end of last year, she was dominating the field on road courses. Brian Sendak's at the fastest lap of the race early on, running a lap in the 1:14 bracket. Tony Durbin was the first car to pit for green flag pit stop. Well, all the pit stops would be under green. Brian Sendak, around lap 6, began to come into encounter lap traffic. This would be Dan Klezel in the 25 Sunoco car. Klezel's not had a very good season so far, and you can just see how much those older tires mean, because Klezel stopped for tires, keep in mind. He stopped after getting in that little tussle, and watch how quickly the 4 car goes by him. Almost like in a bad racing movie. And then Cyrus Laterza in the 74 also had the leaders blast by him as if he wasn't even there. Well, Leonid Roddick could probably say differently, because the 74 did hold him up a little bit, albeit unintentionally. And watch from the roof of the 74 as they all go riding into the distance. Old tires seem to make a big difference. Mike Whitmore won this race last year, mostly on pit strategy. However, a repeat win looked to be out of the cards immediately. Whitmore was pretty slow here last year, and, well, unfortunately, that was repeating itself. The 73 car definitely not one of the fastest cars on the racetrack. Colin Evans in the 30 car last year did not make a good reputation for himself after causing several incidents mid-season that got him, well, on the blacklist of his competitors. However, he was earning his stripes again today as Evans was running a very clean and very respectful race running in the high midfield area. The number 30 car has also failed to qualify for the first 3 rounds. Another local favorite, aside from Lance Andrews on the 44, was Alan Hodges in car 13. Hodges is not from England, he's from nearby Wales. However, both Hodges and Andrews are the only 2 British drivers in the field. However, Hodges races under the flag of Wales and not under the flag of the United Kingdom. Here's Danny Savin, however, going to spoil Hodges' party a little bit behind the lap car of Cyrus Laterza. Laterza makes up for his mistake, apparently, by blocking Savin equally as much as he blocked Hodges. Brian Sendak begins to stretch his lead a bit. You see Roddick is a little further back than he was before, and Rainsford is a little further back as well. And can you see 4th place? I certainly can't. An incident in lap 7 drew some attention. Again involving Dan Klezel. Bruno Battaglia hooks at 25 and turns him into the wall. 25 meant to come into the pit lane. 25 spins in front of the straightaway. Jeff Sesnick, nowhere to go, runs into him. Pretty hard hit. That's a second hard hit in a row for the 2 car with 2 different drivers. Marcus Leonard, as is his usual, goes full throttle around the wreck through the grass. Here's a look on board the 2 car. Jeff kind of committed to the left-hand lane, and that just did not appear to be the right choice. Looked like Dan Klezel was trying to pit, and Bruno Battaglia just hooked the back of him. Lance Andrews in the 44 car, and Damian Snyder pitted from 4th and 5th, a lap ahead of the leaders. And here's how they came out, with Sendak still in the lead over Rainsford and Roderick. However, that gap closed up significantly. Apparently better pit work by the 27 and the 4 cars. This actually gave the lead to Scott Bates, who decided to stay out an extra lap. And this proved to be very crucial because Scott Bates did not qualify very well, but he made up a lot of ground just by staying out. The car was very difficult to handle. Dan Klezel, after wrecking the car, well, look at how slow this thing is going. Car number 25 was creeping around the track, and I think that's probably overstating it. The 25 car, I think oozing may be a better word for it, at about 30 miles an hour. Here's Cyrus Laterza trying to pit. Oh my. Slower driving has never been seen before in the TM Master Cup Series. And then just to top it off, Dan Klezel runs it straight into the pit wall, probably in disgust at his own performance for the rest of the day. 25 car, needless to say, was out of the race. Brian Sendak in the 40 continued leading the race. A dominant performance so far by Sendak. Some people say he shouldn't even be in the field. Scott Bates came out of the pit lane. Oh, Sendak almost sideswipes him. But Bates is going to field in right in between Rainsford and Roderick. However, Roderick is on slightly older tires, and that means slightly warmer tires. And so Roderick is going to make the move right around Scott Bates. This is going to cost him some time, though, as you see there. The leaders are already long, well, not really long gone, but they are certainly pulling away into the distance. Roderick stuck with the 88, fighting for the 88-4 position, I should add. Arto Kekkonen, the Finnish driver, the only Finnish driver in the field, sat in the 5th position. A very respectable run from Arto, who's been doing quite well in his rookie season. Also, we had a pretty exciting battle in a little further back between Danny Savin, Alan Hodges, and Ali Riggs. All of these for position. These are for 6th, 7th, and 8th. There's Riggs in the 29, Savin a little ahead, and then Alan Hodges is going to get the spot from Riggs here. Neither one of these two drivers were willing to give up a spot. This was clearly one of the most exciting battles of the opening stages. Keep in mind, we haven't even gotten past lap 10 yet, and this is a 35-lap race. Now we've completed lap 10, and Chris Johans sits right behind this battle, just hoping he can make up some ground. Johans did not impress too many people last year, however, this year is a complete turnaround. Lance Andrews' pit strategy did not appear to be working because he was quickly sliding through the field and he got stuck behind many cars much slower than he was, Tyrone Stanley in particular. He's going to dispatch the 23 car, and then he is going to be working on the number 45 of Carlos Donzello, who took the series by storm last week. Brian Sendak in the 40 continued to lead the race. Gee, this is going to be something novel. Sendak leading in that blue number 40 car. However, Rainsford and Roderick pitted on lap 12. They came out of the pit lane, and then that's where things started to unravel for Sendak. Rainsford got out a little bit faster than he did, possibly, and then just ran over Sendak, taking both cars off into the grass. A very, very shocking turn of events. Rainsford perhaps a bit aggressive coming out of the pit lane, or perhaps Sendak wasn't quite on it. Who's to say? But Rainsford ran the 40 car off into the grass, and needless to say, there was not too many things FCC friendly that were being aired on the number 40 car's radio. Arto Kekkonen would make up some ground here in the 14 car. However, Arto was involved in the next incident on lap 18. Here's Arto Kekkonen and Ali Riggs battling for position after pit stops have cycled out. Watch the 26 car. Just was not paying attention when he merged onto the track, or he's got something against Ali Riggs and or Arto Kekkonen. Jason Bates, Brian Sendak all compiling in. Oh boy, Stoidler creates a bit of a mess up ahead. Bates nowhere to go, and then Sendak nowhere to go. After such a brilliant start to the race, Brian Sendak would go out of the race on lap 18. Here's it from Jason Bates. Just committed to the line and couldn't slow down in time. In Scott Stoidler's defense, though, he probably didn't think that these two cars would be catching him as quickly as they did and thought it'd be okay to merge on the racing line, so a bit hard to call this one way or the other, but I don't think there will be too many people happy with Stoidler after this one. Similar move is what caused the massive pileup last week at Joliet. Kurt Pliskin decided afterwards he'd run his car into the tires just a little bit, and that cost him a couple of positions. However, he's going to actually get some of those back because you see a smoking car off to the side. That is Brian Sendak. So Pliskin gets a big break because he was in position to lose about 5 spots. You see Marcus Leonard in the 02 back there as well. Another great run from the Canadian. Scott Bates would assume the lead after pit stops would be almost cycled out. Bates was apparently staying out 1 lap later than everybody else, trying to do the pit strategy call. However, after pit stop cycled out, Leonid Roderick in the 4 would just blow right past him, and then Alexis Rainsford in the 27 would also blow right past the 88 car, pretty much as if he wasn't even there. Scott Bates, though, much to his credit, isn't providing these two drivers with, isn't giving them too much of a hard time on the track, figuring, of course, that he will beat them out on fuel mileage. David Krikorian put his car on the wall early on in the race, but he was redeeming himself later on. Krikorian set one of the faster laps of the race, and also he was making up some ground. He was running in about 24th by midway. Great recovery from DK. Leonid Roderick dove the car into the pits. Here's Scott Bates going right by him, rubbernecking past the pit lane. You see Roderick pulling in. Bates goes flying past on a clean road in front of him with no lap traffic to worry about. Alexis Rainsford actually, oddly enough, stayed out with Scott Bates for 1 lap. See, she gets in front of the 13 of Hodges. And then Scott Bates and Rainsford pit on the same lap. Scott Bates assumes the lead and then almost throws his car into the scenery trying to get around Ross Peterson. So a near mistake from Bates could have cost him big time, but he recovers, but it's not enough to hold off Leonid Roderick in the 4, who would once again be hounding him like a bad fur coat. Anyway, Roderick goes by Bates and sails off into the distance. Scott Bates, again, pit cycles. Roderick would be in the pits. Bates would fly right past him. Towards the end of the race is when things began to get interesting because Lauren Roth jumped up from practically nowhere Roth ran the qualifying race because he was so far down in points. The Daytona winner was not expected to do terribly well at Brands Hatch, but he had found himself inside the top 5 with not too many laps remaining. But right in the distance, you can see a bright orange number 4 car hunting him down like a hunting dog. Roderick was not going to stay behind the 39 for too much longer. In fact, Roth is actually currently leading the race at this point. Here comes Roderick on the inside coming out of Druids. Roth not able to put up too much of a fight as Roderick just goes shooting right past him. Also, another car we are not done talking about is Alexis Rainsford. You see, she's willing to use every bit of the track, including some of the grass, in order to hunt down Roderick and make her attempt at winning this race. Rainsford did not decide to give up. A couple other cars we haven't talked about having good runs. Tyrone Stanley, Rachel Rainsford, and then that is Danny Savin in the back in the green 91 car. Scott Bates eventually ran down the 39 car, and Bates would make the move for second, coming down into Druids. Scott Bates, very good run so far for the EFR team today. Here comes Bates on the inside, on the same spot Roderick passed him, ironically. Roth runs a little wide, and Bates says thank you and runs away and into the distance. Alexis Rainsford decided that she wanted to get around the 39 car as soon as possible, and a crossover move here at Brands Hatch. Trying to pass him high, Roth made the block, Rainsford switched over. The 27 car is willing to pass anyone anywhere, she demonstrated there. She was willing to go by around him on the outside with half a lane. White flag lap with Roderick way out in the lead. Alexis Rainsford managed to catch up to Scott Bates. It looked like it was going to be a Volpe finishing second. Either way, Rainsford decided that she was going to have a little more of Bates and decided to get right by him and take second spot. Rainsford's relentlessness got her all the way up to second. However, Leonid Roderick by then was way out into the distance, and Roderick ended up winning the race by about 10 seconds. A fantastic win by Roderick, a canny and cool race, and he celebrated with victory burnouts as the sun began to set. A fantastic drive from Leonid Roderick, and another fantastic drive by Alexis Rainsford in second, and Scott Bates, who finished in third. In fourth, Danny Savin got past Lauren Roth in the last lap. Rachel Rainsford finishes in sixth. I believe this is the first time, well, it's the first time in a long time when we've seen both the Rainsfords in the top 10. They've never finished in the top 5 together, unless I'm mistaken. Tyrone Stanley in 7th. Alan Hodges finished 8th for the home crowd. Palmer Styles 9th, and then Zelda Ashby, a very quiet run. Ashby's strategy to get all the way up from 40th on the grid to 10th. And here are the point standings leaving Brands Hatch. Alan Hodges will have a lot to smile about because he will be leading the standings by 7 over Palmer Styles, 14 over Dale Roswell. Roswell, though, it's fantastic to see him running up there with the youngsters. Roswell's old enough to be is old enough to be the grandfather of some the drivers in this series, probably. Roswell is in his 60s. Scott Bates, another one of the older crowd, in 4th. Alexis Rainsford in 5th. Roderick 6th, the 3-time champion. Danny Savin 7th. Kurt Pliskin, the underdog team, hanging on in the top 10. Tony Durbin in 9th. And a big shout out to last year's Arla champion Chris Johans in 10th place in the standings, 38 out of 1st. And here is 11 through 20. Rachel Rainsford, the much overlooked Rachel Rainsford in 11th. Lewis Kingston in 12th, showing the way for Gasnier. 13th is the Finnish rookie Arto Kekkonen. 14th and 15th are the Chapman cars of Sandoval and Peterson. This is about where they expected to be, and both of them doing a very good job doing exactly what the machinery should be doing. I should remind you, this is only a 2-car operation with the 77 and 47 cars competing against multi-car teams. Fantastic job by both of them. Lauren Roth and Todd Wodarczyk from Motion Motorsports occupy 16th and 17th. Mike Whitmore, driving for Alan Hodges, sits 18th, and then 2 of the Star Motorsports cars of Stephanie McGlynn and Bruno Battaglia, who has exceeded expectations. Former NFLer showing he is capable in more than just American football. That's all for this week in the TM Master Cup Series. I'll see you next time.